So a conversation came up on Discord the other day about third-party evidence for Jesus' existence. A friend said there was none, and I mentioned there was. Tacitus, a Roman historian. He actually corrected me, saying it didn't actually reference Jesus when it says Christus. I disagree and personally feel that it's in direct reference to Pilate's punishment. But I want to know if there is more out there to reference Jesus, and if any reference him as the Son of God.
The Gospels aren't the only ones that are reliable accounts of the life of Jesus.
Are we both wrong?
Maybe.
Well, let's see.
The Gospels aren't the only ones that are reliable accounts of the life of Jesus.
Hold up, Leroy. I haven't introduced you yet. Well, shit. That ruined the way I usually do these openers. Well, yeah, this is Leroy, and he runs the FTD Facts YouTube channel. As you just heard, he has 10 evidences for Jesus to have existed, and we will be going over them. Now for a few ground rules. We at TFA are fine with Jesus existing. Totally okay with a dude named Jesus having lived back then. The main spot of contention is if he was the Son of God or not. For now, it's just a claim by the Bible. So, when we are talking about Jesus, we are talking about him as a deity, not him as a simple preacher and faith healer. Think this is going to be actual evidence for Jesus as the Son of God or not?
No, I don't think so.
Well, Audio Demon, don't be so hasty. We don't know what he will say yet. You do, but I don't. Let's give him his input.
Oh, I'm the only one that matters.
What? I don't get a say in the matter?
I'm the fucking man, and you're just some fucking clown or something!
Husky. And can we just get on with it?
This is going to be very entertaining.
I agree. So, how do we want to move on here?
At number 10, we have Thallus, 52 AD. Thallus is one of the oldest secular writers who mentioned Jesus in his writings. He is so ancient that his work doesn't exist anymore.
Well, evidence that doesn't exist. We're off to a commanding start.
Stay tuned.
Oh, he had more? Well, okay then.
But you see, Julius Africanus quoted his writing where he tried to explain away the darkness occurring at Jesus' crucifixion. In his quote, he described that Thallus explained how the world was surrounded by a fearful darkness, as well as a massive earthquake happened during Jesus' crucifixion. From Thallus' available work, we can conclude that Jesus lived, he was crucified, and that there was an earthquake and darkness at the point of his crucifixion.
So, not Thallus, but Julius Africanus Sextus? Right. So Julius Africanus was actually born about 160 AD after the 4 Gospels of the Bible were written. He did write about some of the things Thallus said, but not entirely just him. He referenced a currently unknown and unverifiable work written by Thallus. Julius was a Bible-believing young Earth creationist and claims to have dated the Earth to about 5500 BCE, plus or minus 10 years. As a personal message to Kent Hovind, ACD and I would like to say,
Shut up! Shut up!
thank you. As for Thallus, he was a great historian. We have some small fragments of his works and truly have no idea what he wrote about Jesus. However, what Julius talks about is this: concerning each of his deeds and his cures, both of his bodies and souls, and the secrets of his knowledge and his resurrection from the dead, this has been explained with complete adequacy by his disciples and the apostles before us. A most terrible darkness fell over all the world. The rocks were torn apart by an earthquake, and many places both in Judea and the rest of the world were thrown down. In the third book of his Histories, Phallus dismisses this darkness as a solar eclipse. In my opinion, this is nonsense. The best part of this is none of that came directly from Julius. It was third party from George Syneclus, or probably not pronouncing that right, and later from Theophanes' confessor, compiled in the 9th century, more than 800 years after the events of the Bible. So Phallus didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God. Julius was just referencing the Bible and talking out of his old world asshole, and number 10 in the countdown is bullshit. Next.
Number 9 is Tacitus, 56 to 120 AD.
Well, that's not an unexpected deja vu.
Cornelius Tacitus was a well-known ancient historian known for his analysis and examination of historical documents, and he explained the existence of Jesus in his Annals of 116 AD. Tacitus described Emperor Nero's response to the Great Fire in Rome and Nero's claim that the Christians were to blame for it. According to him, Jesus lived in Judea, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, and he had followers who were persecuted for their faith in him.
To start, I'll just read what was actually said by Tacitus. Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, and a mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. So Tacitus did not think Jesus was the Son of God, and only referenced him by name to talk about the atrocities of his followers. About the crucifixion itself, this was a common method of torturous killing back then. So what Tacitus is actually saying is, this popular guy was crucified, and his followers are committing acts of terrorism.
Sorry if that's weird.
That isn't evidence. It was actually this Christ the Bible is talking about. Though it probably is, but has no reference to him actually being a deity or not. 2 down, 8 to go.
Moving on to number 8, we have Marabar Sarapan, 70 AD. After 70 AD, a Syrian philosopher named Marabar Sarapan wrote for his son, where he compared the life and persecution of Jesus with that of other philosophers who were persecuted for their ideas. Marabar Sarapan called him the wise king, and he described how Jews murdered their wise king, and after which their kingdom was abolished. He has also said that God avenged those men, and according to Marabar Sarapan's work, Jesus was a wise and influential man who died for his beliefs. The Jewish leadership was also somehow responsible for Jesus' death, and Jesus' followers adopted his beliefs and lived their lives accordingly.
I feel like we're trying to build to something, but yeah, by his own words, Mara thought he was a wise philosopher and not the Son of God. Keep in mind, while you are listening to all of this, I am not trying to debunk Leroy, just to see if his evidence has anyone saying Jesus was the Son of God. I started this out by saying I have certain criteria and looking for when it comes to the historicity. I still hold that Jesus existed, and I am fine with accepting all of this to say he was a real person. I just think the stories were heavily embellished upon.
So, what do you think?
I'm getting there. Hold your horses.
Of course.
So, Mara wrote a letter in about 73 CE where he refers, rather casually I might add, to the unjust treatment of 3 wise men, Socrates, Pythagoras, and the wise king of the Jews. Mara is believed to have been pagan, and at no time did the wise king get referred to as Jesus or Christ. And in fact, his letter did not contain any Christian themes or statements. though it is believed that the wise king mentioned was actually Jesus. Historical data on Jesus, but not evidence of divinity. Come on, Leroy. Let's go.
The next evidence comes from Phlegon, 80 to 140 AD. Like Thales, Julius Africanus also mentioned a historian named Phlegon, who wrote a chronicle of history around 140 AD. Phlegon also focused on the darkness surrounding Jesus' crucifixion, and according to Phlegon, Jesus had the ability to predict the future pretty accurately, and he was crucified under the reign of Tiberius Caesar. He also says that Jesus showed his wounds after he was resurrected to people that he came in contact.
Again, this really isn't about Phlegon, spelled with a PH, not an F. He wasn't a grass-type Pokemon. But this is about Julius Africanus Sextus and what he did. So, Phlegon was a Greek philosopher from the 2nd century CE, talking about things written in the Gospels and not the actuality of the man Jesus as the Son of God. So this is just completely empty.
Yeah.
Sorry, Leroy.
Next up at number 6, we have Pliny the Younger, 61 to 113 AD. The early Christians were also described in the early non-Christian history. Pliny the Younger, in a letter to the Roman Emperor Trajan, he described the lifestyles of early Christians.
It sounds like Leroy is scraping the bottom of the barrel here. This is not a historicity of Jesus, but a historicity of Christians. Jesus could have been a myth, and this would still hold true for Pliny to observe what he did. Not spending any more time with this one since it's not even evidence of Jesus being real.
Number 5 leads us to Lucien of Samosata, 115 to 200 AD. Lucien was a Greek satirist who spoke sarcastically of Jesus and Christians, but in the process he actually affirmed that they were real people and never referred to them as fictional characters or anything like that.
Still at the bottom of the barrel here. Leroy, when you are giving your evidence, you start off with the weakest and end with the strongest. Lucien wrote an insulting commentary on various religions, among other things. I make fun of Christian beliefs all the time, but it doesn't say Jesus was real just because I'm teasing them. And it definitely doesn't show that Jesus was actually historical. I want evidence for Jesus being the Son of God. Come on, Leroy. Do it.
Fulfill your destiny.
Moving on now to number 4, we have Celsus, 175 AD. Celsus was also quite antagonistic to the claims of the Gospels in the Bible, but in his criticism, he unknowingly affirmed and reinforced the biblical authors and their content. So Celsus, he confirmed that Jesus was able to perform miracles. According to Celsus's writings, Jesus had an earthly father who was a carpenter, and he possessed unusual magical powers, and also he says that Jesus claimed to be God. Celsus's writings is extensive, and he alluded to 80 different biblical quotes, and this would of course confirm their early appearance in history.
Another one speaking about Christianity, almost 2 centuries after Jesus' birth. So what Celsus wrote about was pointing out that people would declare tricksters and magicians as fake and not divine. So why is Jesus some exclusion to the same claims? He called Jesus' miracles fake, as claimed in the Bible, and the stories told were through the followers of him. But again, even if Jesus was not historical, but instead there being a following of someone that did not actually exist, the exact same thing would have happened as happened to Celsus. I'm getting tired of this. It's getting worse for the historicity. So, you know what? I think I'm just going to call it here.
No, you don't get to end this.
Why not?
Important things.
Well, it seems ACD knows something I don't, and they've never steered me wrong. So, let's move on.
Josephus comes up next at number 3, 37 to 101 AD. Coming to the ancient hostile Jewish sources, Josephus is a Jewish source, right? And Josephus wrote in detail about Jesus in his Antiquities of the Jews in 93 AD. Under the rule of Roman Emperor Vespasian, Josephus was allowed to write a history of the Jews where he wrote about Jesus as a wise man and the Messiah. There are many ancient versions of Josephus's writings, but we can conclude that from them that Jesus lived in Palestine, the area known as Palestine, and he was a wise man, and he was also a teacher. He did amazing things, and he was accused by the Jews and crucified under Pilate, and had followers who were then called Christians.
Okay, Jewish historian. This is at least something. The good news is, yes, this is better evidence for Jesus' historicity, since he had direct contact with people that knew Jesus. Good! We have clear evidence that Jesus was a real person. Clear enough that the average person reading through the works of Flavius Josephus would be able to discern that Jesus was an actual person. So what Josephus said was, these people he interviewed stated that Jesus was... You know what, how about I just give the quote here? Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man. For he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as receive a truth with pleasure. He drew over them both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. Drew over to him. Reread it. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man. For he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as receive the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him. For he appeared to them alive on the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct to this day. The good news is, this is historicity of Jesus. The bad news is, this is most assuredly not from a first-hand witness, but a third or more, where the actuality of the history is askew with a number of years for the actual events to have been lost or heavily embellished upon. Josephus called him a teacher, and didn't use the word Messiah, but instead said the Christ, or more accurately, the son of a king. King David, and in Jewish tradition, was to not be the son of God, but instead to restore fortune to Israel. So even Josephus did not think Jesus was the son of God or a deity. Close, but not quite. Come on, Leroy. Next clip, please.
In at the number 2 spot, we have Jewish Talmud, 400 to 700 AD. In the Talmudic writing, Jesus was referred to as Balaam ben Stada, or a certain one. And according to the Talmudic passages, Jesus practiced magic and he led Israel astray.
You went backwards. You went backwards. Obviously, if I went into everything the Talmud says, we would be here for the next, hour not doing that. Sorry, I don't have the time. This is the exact opposite of what I wanted. The Jews don't think Jesus was the Son of God. They think he was just a guy that took the Jews and distracted them from the truth. Imagine if Jesus never existed. We would not have Christianity. We would not even have Islam. Both of those belief systems are in conflict with Judaism. And hundreds of years after Jesus, one left to go. Come on, any books that directly reference Jesus as the Son of God that aren't just referencing the Bible?
Not today, Satan!
Well, let's at least hear him out.
And finally, in at the number 1 spot, we have the Toldat Yeshu, 1000 AD.
That's the number 1? That's the number 1. 1,000 years after Jesus was supposed to walk the earth, and that's evidence of his actuality? Are you fucking kidding me? You know what? I don't even care what it says. I don't give a shit what it says. Everything builds up to the number 1, and it's just another version of looking what the Bible says. I am legit pissed off that I did this entire thing building up to the number 1, and I get the absolute worst finality to this. Audio Clip Demon, what do you think about these 10 evidences?
Take your little friends and go home! Please.
You sound angry as I am about this.
You know what? This was a mistake.
Yeah, I think we're done here.
Well, I'm starved. Who wants some jambalaya?
That actually sounds really good right now. ACD and I are going to go cook some food. Oh, I'm Corsi, and this is the Fluffy Atheist. Pet those like and subscribe buttons, and share this if you want to share a funny video or you want to point and laugh. I'm going to go eat. I mean, I'm good either way. So do you do yours in a pot or a pressure cooker?